violent clashes. This is what's happening on the streets of the capital of Georgia, Tbilisi, filled with tear gas, protesters shooting fireworks at police. Some of the stories that have been described about how protesters are being treated are foul. Anti-Putin protesters have now been clashing with police for 6 straight days.
After President Biden allowed Ukraine to strike parts of Russia with U.S.-built and proffered missiles, Putin is threatening to retaliate with strikes against U.S. facilities and says his military hit Ukraine today with a medium-range hypersonic ballistic missile.
Putin is ramping up his rhetoric and reckless actions. He is using Ukraine as a testing ground for experimental missiles and is deploying North Korean soldiers in this illegal war.
What if I told you Vladimir Putin is facing crisis on multiple fronts, from Syria to Ukraine to domestic upheaval in Russia, and that his once unshakable grip on power might finally be slipping? Well, tonight we unpack the dominoes falling around Putin and why the next few months could be a tipping point for his regime. Stay with me. Welcome to the Revo Review. I'm Vince Revo.
But that war has every potential to reignite. So to lose Syria as well, also to see its position weakened in Syria, would be another blow in a series of blows to Iran and its proxy militias.
Fighters from Iraq have been crossing into Syria to support President Assad's regime. They've been pulled in to help fight the rebels who took the second biggest city, Aleppo, at the weekend. Edmund Bauer is the Times correspondent in the Middle East and trying to explain what is going on in what is a relatively complicated conflict. Edmund, good morning to you.
Good morning.
These are Iraqis, but they're part of the Iranian group of militias operating in the region. Is that right?
That's right. This is, I think, an opportunity for Iran to show its support for the Assad regime. So on a call with Assad just a couple of days ago, both the Iranian and the Russian president reaffirmed their support for the Assad regime, and the news that Iraqi fighters are being sent to shore up their defences, I think is part of that effort to show that they're standing with Assad and they don't want to see another city fall to the rebels.
Is it also a tacit admission that maybe they got a bit distracted, that if you look at what Iran...
Point number one, Putin's allies are in trouble. Let's start with Syria, a cornerstone of Putin's strategy to project power in the Middle East. For the first time in over a decade, Aleppo, the second largest city in Syria, has fallen to rebel forces. Think about that. A city that Assad, with Putin's air power, fought tooth and nail to hold, is now lost. This isn't just a blow to Assad, it's a direct slap to Putin's influence. Why? Because Syria isn't just about Assad, it's about Tartus and Latakia, Russia's critical bases giving it access to the Mediterranean Sea. Losing those would be catastrophic for Putin's regional ambitions. Number two, domestic and international chaos. But it doesn't stop there. Back in Russia, the cracks are deepening. Putin's approval of a massive military budget, a third of Russia's national finances, screams desperation. Inflation is skyrocketing, basic goods are scarce, and public dissent, though heavily censored, is bubbling to the surface. This isn't just about a failing economy, it's about Russia's people finally feeling the toll of his adventurism. And let's not forget Georgia. Protesters have erupted over their government's decision to postpone EU talks, a move cheered by Putin. But those same streets now chant against Moscow's influence, showing that even where Putin thought he had a foothold, resistance is rising.
Не може бути запрошення НАТО частини території України. Це автоматичне визнання, що всі інші території не тільки частини території України. Це автоматичне визнання, що всі інші території не тільки в небезпеці, а всі інші території не українські. Тому Україна ніколи на це не піде. Якщо це запрошення, то тільки повністю всіх територій. Але, як ми говорили, ми розуміємо, що п'ята поправка...
Point number 3. Ukraine and NATO's resolve. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. Your voice matters, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on how the West should respond. Now, Ukraine. Putin's original goal was clear: crush Ukraine's sovereignty, force regime change, and block NATO expansion. But guess what? The plan is unraveling. Ukraine, backed by the West, is not only holding the line, but forcing Russia into untenable losses. Reports estimate that Russia has suffered more casualties in Ukraine than in all its post-World War II conflicts combined. Add to that the recent advances in Syria by rebel groups, and Putin's military is stretched dangerously thin. Even Zelensky's peace proposals, strategically offering ceasefires while pushing NATO guarantees, are turning the table. It's brilliant geopolitics. Putin is running out of time and resources to achieve his goals, and the cracks, my friends, are showing.
In light of what we heard from the head of NATO, Mark Rutte, as well as the Prime Minister, are we getting closer to seeing the contours of what a settlement might look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if we're going to see the contours of a deal anytime soon, but what we are seeing is everyone is preparing for the fact that this will be different next year. I mean, into next year, after Christmas, into the spring, however long it may take, the dynamics of this war are going to be different because the politics on the outside are different. And most people believe that we are heading towards some sort of truce or ceasefire. It certainly won't be a peace deal because there's almost no way you can make peace between what Russia wants and Ukraine's ability to stay alive. As they always say, it's very hard to negotiate with somebody who's trying to kill you. So we'll see some sort of, maybe a truce, maybe a ceasefire. And what the Western allies are saying is that we want to give Ukraine as much leverage as and when that takes place. But what the outlines of a deal could be, I mean, everyone's got ideas, but I could give you half a dozen different ideas now, but where it's going to go when President President-elect Trump becomes president, nobody knows. And, of course, he keeps, I mean, one of his sources of power is that he keeps people frightened of him and frightened of his unpredictability. And, in a way, that is a strength. It wears off after a few years, I have to say, but I mean, for now, his unpredictability is some sort of source of strength. So he's got everybody running around trying to come up with things, and that gives them options to play with. And so we're talking about some sort of freezing of the front lines somewhere, and then some sort of way of securing that truce, that ceasefire, so that it doesn't break down within 6 months or a year.
What does that look like in that eventuality that you can have a deal?
Like a very long...
Point number 4, the West's role and what comes next. Here's the real question you need to think about. How will the West play its cards? With the Biden administration pumping billions into Ukraine and Trump poised to potentially take the reins, the stakes are sky high. If Trump leans into Putin's weakness, NATO might just have the confidence to push harder, from providing advanced weaponry to intercepting Russia's missiles outright. This, my friends, is a pivotal moment. The West has to stay unified. Putin's regime thrives on division, whether in Europe or the US. But if Ukraine hangs on just a little longer, if sanctions continue to squeeze, and if the Russian people's growing discontent reaches critical mass, this could be end game.
Вы знаете, меня, думаю, что у вас тоже больше всего как бы поразило даже не то, что в отношении Трампа применялись абсолютно не цивилизованные средства борьбы, абсолютно цивилизованные, но вплоть до попытки убийства, причем неоднократного. Кстати говоря, на мой взгляд, и сейчас он не в безопасности. Ну, к сожалению, в истории Соединенных... Да, здесь, а что? В истории Соединенных Штатов были всякие разные случаи. Поэтому, ну, я думаю, что он человек умный, уже надеюсь, и осторожный, понимает все.
Isaiah 40:31 says, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. For Ukraine, for the oppressed in Syria, and for those yearning for freedom in Russia, let this be a reminder. Perseverance, rooted in hope, can overcome even the darkest of challenges. Stay informed, stay engaged, and keep speaking up. Your voice matters. God bless you.